and market features. So here we're going to get into more details about mortgage-backed securities. You already know a little bit about time tranching, how we deal with contraction risk and expansion risk, how we use a packed tranche and a support tranche to do that, right? We're going to talk a little bit more about mortgages. What is a mortgage? What is the difference between a residential mortgage and a commercial mortgage-backed security? So let's get into it. We'll be looking at prepayment risk and time tranching. That's related to contraction risk, expansion risk. We've talked about this in earlier learning modules. We're going to talk about it in more detail. Now, we'll get into residential mortgages, their types, characteristics, and then finally, we'll get into commercial mortgage-backed securities. Now, first of all, what is time tranching? So this is a solution to prepayment risk. Now, what is prepayment risk? And we talked about this earlier, that there is a certain natural rate of prepayment, right? It's not like there's no prepayment or prepayment only happens when the interest rate goes down. So an individual, when they get a home loan or a mortgage, right? Of course, the main input is what is the interest rate at which this individual got the rate, the mortgage. Let's say if it is 5% and the interest rate in the market goes to 3%, it goes down. So this individual will be sad. Why they will be sad is because they'll be like, oh no, I'm paying 5%, but the interest rate is now 3%. So if I can somehow pay this 5% mortgage off, then I can get it refinanced at 3%, right? This is what they will try to do. And of course, they will then try to prepay or settle this home loan earlier than planned. But even when the interest rate hasn't changed, there is still a certain prepayment that is happening, which is natural, and causes for natural rate are people shift, right? I mean, it's not just because of interest rate that you want to prepay your loan. Maybe you're just shifting because you got married to somebody who lives in a different city, or your work, you got a job in a different city, right? So people also shift because maybe they want to get a bigger house, they're doing well at work, so they want to get a bigger house, or maybe the opposite. So this is called the natural situation. And there is something called a Public Securities Association in the US. And what these guys have done, they have done an analysis, right? The PSA has done an analysis on this natural rate of prepayment. That usually what is the rate of prepayment in these type of securities, in these type of loans. And what happens is that if the interest rate is going down, then the prepayments are faster than the natural rate. That is what gives rise to prepayment risk. Prepayments are always there. It's just that more than expected. If the prepayments are there more than expected, that happens when the interest rate goes down. And the exact opposite is true. If the interest rate goes up, then nobody wants to settle their loan. They're happy that they have been able to lock in a loan at 5% when the market interest rate is now 7%. So they wouldn't want to prepay now. Then you face something called expansion risk. So prepayment risk can be broken up into two things, right? Contraction risk and expansion risk. And we don't like either of those, right? So what we want to do is we want to deal with this. And how do we deal with it? Well, time tranching is the solution, right? Time tranching is the solution to deal with prepayment risk, which is basically, what is prepayment risk? You're getting payments not as per the schedule, but either earlier than expected or later than expected. So you could have contraction risk or expansion risk. Interest rates go down, people will want to prepay and get the financing again at lower rates. So then what you will have is higher prepayment, which leads to contraction risk. And if interest rates go up, then people will want to hold on. People will want to hold on to those lower rate mortgages, and what you will have is extension risk. Right. So if interest rate is going down from 8 to 6, what we will see is that people will want to get their loan refinanced, and you will have contraction risk. Similarly, if interest rate is going up, then what will happen is extension risk. Now, what is the solution? It's time tranching. And what we basically do is that, let's say this is your SPV, right? This is your pool, and the cash flows are coming in. And then the SPV, what it does is it makes two tranches. This is the simplest way. One will be called the planned amortization class, and that is your pack tranche. And then you have your support tranche. Now, the support tranche obviously bears the burden of both expansion risk and contraction risk. So let's say originally this pool has a weighted average maturity of 30 years, right? That, of course, there are different loans or different mortgages inside this pool. Some people might have 27 years left, some people might have 33 years left, some people might have 30 years left to pay off, right? So we're taking the weighted average over here, and let's say that weighted average maturity is 30 years. But the weighted average life can be different than the weighted average maturity. If, let's say, interest rates go down, people will want to prepay, and the support tranche will take all the prepayment. So this could reduce to maybe as short as 2 years, right? Or if the interest rates go up, then all that extension risk will go to the support tranche, and that might have your weighted average life going up to something like 70 years. But the planned amortization, the pack tranche, we will protect them and we will give them the payments as expected. The amortization here is planned. So the support tranche protects the pack tranche from any kind of expansion or contraction risk. And we will cover this in a little more detail shortly. Right. So just a little bit of an introduction about mortgages. I'm sure all of you know what a mortgage is, right? How does it work? The buyer is going to take out a loan and they're going to buy a certain real estate, and then they're going to make payments on that. If they are unable to make payments, if they default, then the lender will take possession of the property and sell it to recover the funds. Very, very simple concept. I'm sure all of you know what a mortgage is, right? Now, there is something which is called loan to value ratio. So let's say if this is the value of the property, if this is the value, right, the loan will be smaller than the value. So if the value is 10 million, the loan will be, let's say, 8 million. So this buffer that you're keeping, 2 million, this is there to absorb any losses in the value. So if the value goes down, because let's say the housing market is going down, so at least your loan amount is less than the value. Even if it goes down by 20%, if the value of the property goes down by 20%, you're still safe because you can easily recover your loan by forced sale of the property. Needless to mention that the interest that has to be paid will be only based on the outstanding loan, not on the entire value. Right, so the loan to value ratio in our example will be 8/10, which is 80%. And what do we want? We want a lower loan to value ratio, because a lower loan to value ratio, let's say if this is 6 and the entire value is 10, then what you have is a 4 million buffer for absorbing any fall in the price of the property. Right, so the lower loan to value is better for the lender, right? And also what we want to see is debt to income ratio. So now that individual who's taking the mortgage from us, this is the borrower, right? What we want to see is that, okay, how much is the borrower's income? Let's say this fellow earns $400,000 per annum, right? And he or she has borrowed from us 8 million for a property of 10. So, and they have to pay 5% per annum on this 8 million, right? So 5% of 8 million is $400,000, right? So that's ridiculous, because if this fellow is earning $400,000 per year and 5% of 8 million is $400,000, so clearly we shouldn't be giving them a mortgage on a 10 million property, even if there is 2 million to absorb the loss, because they cannot pay all of their income to us. What we want to see is that the interest that they have to pay us shouldn't be more than maybe 20-30% of their income, right? I mean, how can you expect somebody to pay all their income to you? And of course, this is looked at a monthly level, not an annual level. So let's translate this into a monthly situation, right? Let's translate this into a monthly situation. So 4 million divided by 12 means they have to pay $33,000 to us per month. So that's ridiculous. If their income is $33,000 per month, which is highly unlikely, who gets paid $33,000 a month, right? So yeah, I mean, it's just a hypothetical example, but you get the point, right? What we want is, so let's say if let me give you another example, because this is not a very good example. Nobody makes $33,000 a month. Hardly anyone, unless you're like a very big businessman or a CEO of a large corporation. So let's say this guy's income is $10,000 per month, right? And he's coming to us to borrow a property. He wants to buy a house for, let's say, $5 million. Now, what we would say is that, okay, we feel we should not burden you that much with debt. So let's say 33% of your income, or $3,333, is what we feel should be the interest that you can pay per month, right? And if, let's say, the annual rate is 5%, so this, if you multiply it by 12, becomes 3333 into 12. So the annual interest that they should be paying should be around $40,000, right? And if 5% is the interest, so this divided by that gives you that the maximum loan amount we can give them is $800,000, which is nothing compared to the value of this property. So clearly what we will tell this person is that, hey, you cannot afford to buy a property of 5 million. Then they're probably going to look for a smaller house. Maybe they'll find something for like maybe 2 million, right? And if we give them 800,000, that is still not even going to be 50%, but at least it will be something, right? It's going to be what, 40%? 40%. Approximately, yeah. So this is how it works, right? What we want is a lower debt to income ratio, that they should be able to easily pay us that interest and not feel the burden on their income. They should have enough money left from their income to do other things, such as pay their children's school fees or buy the monthly grocery or whatever, right? So that's what separates prime loans from subprime loans. And this is what happened in the global financial crisis in 2008, that because of the originate to distribute model, the banks were just originating these subprime loans and they were putting them in a pool, and through SPVs they were putting them into different tranches and getting very, very good credit ratings for the senior tranches, even though the pool was just full of garbage. I mean, it was all subprime loans with such bad credit quality and high debt to income and high loan to value, that once the default started, all the junior tranches and the equity tranche, residual tranche, they were all gone, and even the senior tranches faced serious amounts of losses. So now, of course, you're getting a much better grip about this entire discussion, and you know about covered bonds, and now you're becoming an expert on this entire situation, right? And prime loans obviously are higher quality, strong credit history of the borrower, low amount of loan is given compared to the value of the property. So there is low loan to value and there is a low debt to income ratio as well. And if you're putting that originator, the bank, in a position that they have the investors have a recourse to the bank in the case of covered bonds that is there. So what they will do is they will ensure that the origination of the loans is done in a very nice way, and they will try to originate prime loans. And even if they are originating a loan to somebody who has low credit quality, at least they will give them a low loan to value, right? So there is enough room in the property to absorb any losses. Even if the property market crashes by 50%, you'll still be able to recover your loan. Right. So let's take a break here and then we'll come back and get into agency and non-agency RMBS.